Hello and welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast. Today we're joined by tournament angler Ryan Buddie. Ryan, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me on, Chris.
Ryan, you had a great season this year on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, Team of the Year with your partner Jason Kopp. Tell me a little bit about your season and what it was like this year for you.
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail's really blown up. It's gotten Jason Fisher took it over. It's gotten huge. A lot of the tournaments are over 100 boat fields, and we just had one of those dream seasons. It started off. I think we got like a fifth in the first one and a second, and we just kept on stringing together these top tens. And then going into the last tournament of the year, the last two tournaments of the year, we had the lead. In Team of the Year, which is a really big deal. It's got a good monetary prize, but also it's the biggest bragging right and the most sought after award in the trail as well. And we were in the lead, and but there were some teams nipping at our heels, and we were able to close the door with a win in the last regular season one, and then we won the championship, and it was just a dream way to finish the season, and really, really fun and really rewarding. A lot of hard work went into it, and it's something we love to do. And then when you're crowned the best, the best of the best, it's pretty special award. So we're really excited about that.
You guys had 6 top 10s in 8 total tournaments, 2 wins. Tell me a little bit about some of the ports. Where are the places that you guys are fishing? Just kind of go through a little bit of the tournaments and those locations and how you did.
Yeah, it's cool. They do a good job of following the migration of the fish from west to east. So that's basically what we do. So in the spring, we're in the Western Basin near the spawning grounds. We take off out of Turtle Creek, out in the firing range near the Cans area of Lake Erie, and then we move west. So then I think we went to Sandusky next, and then Huron, Lorain, and those are kind of the West Central Basin tournaments. And then you get into July, and then they go out east to like Ashtabula, which right on the Ohio PA border, and then slowly start coming back as we went into like early fall, and then the championship. So that was early fall. Early September was Geneva, which we won that, and then the championship was Fairport, and we won that as well. And those tournaments, those are the Eastern Basin, deep water, summer patterns that you're kind of running there. And so yeah, that's the migration it followed. And the nice thing about it too is they stay on the bite. So it's not like there's some of them where guys are making monster runs, running 40, 50 miles. But I mean, the last 2 tournaments that we run, we won the Geneva and the Fairport championship. We were 12 to 15 miles from port. So that's really nice and refreshing when you can make a run like that and still do really well. And most of the tournaments give you an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it's nice to not have to spend your entire check on fuel putting into the boat. You can run close to home and run that kicker motor more than the big motor. Really helps out. Can you talk about that a little bit about how, as that season progresses, your techniques, the ways that you're targeting these fish, how does that change as the season goes through and you're moving from port to port?
Yeah, early in the season, you tend to be, you're in the Western Basin, you tend to be a lot more on like structure bites, which that's really what I would prefer and like to do. So you're fishing like tight, contours, sandbars, some of the dumping grounds, shoals, things like that. Like that's what we're fishing, and a lot of it is just precision boat control and carving around those. And we were trolling in every one of these tournaments as well, except one of them was a jig and only tournament, but the other 7 tournaments we were trolling in all those tournaments. And so yeah, that's kind of what you end up doing early in the year. Usually you end up starting off trolling crankbaits in that cold water. As the water warms up, we'll kind of go over to a spinner program. And through through June or so, we're kind of carving, shallow water structure spots pretty much. Then you got into July where we're going out east and we fished the Ashtabula tournament. And there we're fishing deep water structure. Like, so we were fishing like a big, they call it the triangle up in the Pennsylvania area near the border. And there's a whole lot of mid-lake deep structure that comes from, 70 some feet of water. And there's humps that top off at 45 feet of water. And you're kind of carving that deep water area where that thermocline hits that structure. Yeah, so that's deeper water structure fishing. And then as we came back into that Geneva and Fairport tournament, those were just straight up thermoclines and open water basin, just, basin water. And you're finding that thermocline and trying to put your baits right on it.
Ryan, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail is a little bit different than a lot of the tournament series that you see. I mean, you go fish on like some national tours. It's a pro angler and a co-angler. With you in the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, you're fishing with the same guy every time you go out. You've got a partner. You guys are working together. Tell me about how that strategy works and how you work with a partner on a tournament series.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's kind of a funny thing is like, I've fished with a lot of different partners in team tournaments, and sometimes you could be with another really good angler, but you don't have that chemistry and it just doesn't work together. Almost like you might have like, I've done it where I've been like the total alpha of the team. And then, I have someone that's fishing with me that's just, a yes, sir kind of guy. And I haven't done that well doing that. And then, I mean, we've done all right, but then I, for this one, for example, I got a guy like Jason Koff, who, I mean, he's probably the most winningest tournament angler on Lake Erie. He's been doing this for 25 years, but not right now. He doesn't have a walleye tournament boat. I have that. And we used to fish together back when I didn't have a boat and he did, like 15 some years ago. And I mean, it's not like I'm just running the total show. Like I'm making every decision. Everything's collaborative. He's got a ton of experience. I kind of coined him my bird dog this year. It's like I take him out. If I put him out in the field with birds, he's going to sniff them up, So if I put him out, if I can get out on a spot, I use my electronics. If I get out on a spot, find the spot, and I just say, okay, let's start fishing. He's gonna put together the program, or he's gonna make fish start hopping in the boat. So, we work together, we make decisions together, and it just works. It's not, like I said, it's not always just my decision or not always his, and makes it work out well. We definitely have good chemistry for sure.
Well, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail last year obviously made headlines with the scandal and everything that went on there, but it sounds like full fields. And I think it seemed like it was one of those things that while two guys came out of that looking pretty bad, the trail itself, the tournament series itself, I think Jason really became kind of the hero out of the whole deal there. How do you feel like that affected the Lake Erie Walleye Trail going forward after all that stuff happened?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one as well. So, he had the Lake Erie Walleye Trail going in a great direction before those guys and with those guys around. But there was a lot of chatter. I mean, there was a lot of chatter, and there was a lot of us that thought that those guys were up to no good before they were actually caught. And actually, it's good that obviously it was good that they were caught, and it was a good timing for it to get caught, because there was a lot of people that were like getting to the point where they're like, I'm not going to fish anymore if these guys are still in it. And, so of course they got caught, and that was a breath of fresh air for a lot of us that were like, okay, now we're back to an even playing field. Got a lot of publicity, even though it was negative publicity, it was still publicity. So that kind of grew it. And, it's really remarkable what it's become, because I mean, for example, Jason Koff and we won the Lake Erie Walleye Trail in 2010. the team of the year. I think we got like a 2-foot plastic trophy and a jacket. And then, I don't even think there's any, money on the line for that. The championship, the fields, if you won a tournament, you won like $2,000. This last championship we won with Ranger Cup and winning the tournament, we won $22,000 for that. And then team of the year, we won another $10,000. So it's like we walked away with $33,000 in a tournament that was, it's a $400 entrance fee, and then there's a little bit of a option pot, but then, that's a testament to the size of the fields he's drawing. And then he also has some great sponsors for the tournament as well. So that kind of just brings in money and fuels everything and just makes it that much better. There's a great staff involved that makes the tournaments run really well. And so it's really cool what it's grown to. I mean, like it used to be, you can earn way more money on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail than, some of these other team format circuits. I won't say any of the names, but I mean, you can look it up and it's pretty remarkable, and it's a great group of anglers. It's run really well. It's fair now, and it's fun to do for sure.
Very cool. Tell me about, I mean, this is, you talked about the money there, and yeah, that's awesome money to be winning in tournaments. But this isn't your gig. I mean, your gig is you're a pilot, and I think that's very cool. Tell me about how being a pilot and being a tournament fishing angler, how are those things similar? What do you use? What skills do you use in your everyday real, job that translates into what you're doing on the water?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because so I work for Delta Airlines, and when I interviewed for Delta, I did equate a lot of tournament fishing to the job as a pilot. So it's this is the first time I've been asked this the other way. But yeah, I mean, you're operating heavy equipment, heavy, high-powered, technological, advanced equipment, electronics, things like that. So just learning that is part of it. You're analyzing weather all the time. Safety is a big thing. So those are kind of the things. And the other big thing, and I kind of equate this more to even the Pro-Am side, but even the team format is the teamwork aspect of it. So like when I show up for a flight to fly with Delta, I mean, there's 16,000 of us pilots at Delta. So now, granted, we each have our own position within our own fleet and base. So that does narrow down the pot a little bit, but most of the time when I show up, I'm showing up to work with a stranger, a guy I never met before. And you're going into an environment where you're working, a highly critical, important job that's, requires networking and teamwork and the other guy and, communication and things like that. And it's with someone that you might've never met before, and you have to instantly go in and do your job and be a professional and do that. And, tournament fishing, guiding, it's the same thing, especially, those national walleye tours. I feel like one of the reasons I've done really well with that is I feel like I work, and I think you could ask any of my co-anglers that I've had over the year. I think I do really well at establishing a rapport with those co-anglers right off the bat, and then kind of like, just developing a relationship and monitoring that person. So like, one of our jobs as a pilot is monitoring the other guy and making sure they're doing their job, and hopefully they're doing the same thing for me. So, and then coaching them up and things like that. So that communication aspect that I get to do every day when I go to, well, not every day, but when I do go to work as a pilot, you're doing this kind of the same thing with the other people that you're fishing in the boat with, whether it's someone you've done fish with for many, many years or someone that you just met that day. It's kind of the same job, that communication aspect for sure, and teamwork.
Very cool. You talked about electronics. You talked about putting puzzles together. One of the tools you use is the Fishhawk X2. Tell me a little bit about how you use the Fishhawk X2 to catch more fish.
Yeah, absolutely. I started using it, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so. And, before that, I always just kind of, you watch how your rods are running. Okay. And you see how your rods are running to see how, the speed on your bait. The biggest thing I like it for is the speed. knowing what the speed of your baits is through the water. And so I kind of would use, the load of the rods to determine my speed through the water, which significantly impacts where your baits are running in the water, especially if you're running things that are negatively buoyant. So like any of the inline weights or lead core or tadpoles or dipsy divers or anything like that. So, but then I started using the fish hawk, and it just makes it that much more precise. And every pass that I do, I was out fishing yesterday, and the guy I was with was asking me about he's a salmon guy actually, and he was asking me, and I have the X2 on the shorty rod, and it's so nice and convenient. I'm like, I could just drop this right over the side. It takes me 3 seconds to deploy and have it and have a reading. So I'm like, I drop it every single pass that I've trolled this entire year. And he was like, wow. He was, yeah. I'm like, it's just free information. But, back to your question as to how I use it. So when I first started using it, I kind of gave myself a headache with it. So in other words, I was always under the impression I need to go out there and figure out what the current is. Okay, so if I'm trolling with the waves this direction and my speed over ground says it's doing 2 mile an hour, and my fish hawk says I'm doing 1.5 mile an hour, does that mean I'm going with a 0.5 mile an hour current? Well, then you turn around and that number doesn't match. And part of the reason I think it does is the calibration on the X2 isn't exactly what it would be in a zero current situation. And there is a way, and I've talked with Trevor and some of the other guys on, well, can I calibrate it? But then the question is like, well, when are you ever in a completely zero current situation to calibrate it? So I kind of changed to the mentality of, you know what, I don't really care exactly what the calibration is, and I care exactly what the current is of the water underneath there. What I care about is what speed through the water is leading to productivity. Okay. So my fish hawk's down. I'm out there trolling. I set a speed that I feel is right for whatever circumstances I'm using. So whether I'm using inline weights or dipsies or whatever. And when I get a bite, one of the first things my eyes go to is that fish hawk and see what my speed through the water is. So then I know, okay, that's what I need to duplicate. And that's basically the program for all of fishing and anything, is duplicating things out of success. So when I can see that, that speed through the water that thing's telling me that produced a bite, now I can go duplicate that. And I know that's kind of long-winded, but I'll give you one more thing on that too, is the other problem that I've found, especially on Lake Erie, is if you try to just have this mentality of like, okay, the current, the lake is season from east to west, that's where the water raises up and down with wind. Okay. So it's rising up and down. You got the Detroit River flowing through there. That's creating current. So you got these things that are making currents. Well, it's not that if you're on the south shoreline, it's not like the current's just constantly going west to east at 0.3 or 0.5 mile an hour or whatever. There's all sorts of eddies and currents and seams that are along the shoreline. So you make one pass one way, and you might see that even though your bow mount's the same speed, your kicker's the same speed, everything's the same, you're going to see that speed through the fish hawk vary quite a bit. So it's not just a constant current that you need to know. It's just, okay, what is this doing right now? And that's the way I use the X2 to tell me the speed. And that's why I use it that way. It's just duplicating success with the speed that it's giving me.
Yeah, it's amazing for people who haven't used it, how much difference in current there is locally. I mean, you can be going the same heading, for a mile and have very, very different current readings. Just if there's a little bit of structure on the bottom, it's making that water move a different way. And, people think of the Great Lakes as lakes, but really the way the water moves through them, it's very much like a river. And I think if you're not a good river fisherman, it's going to take a while for you to find success in the Great Lakes, because that current makes such a big difference on how things work under the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And the time that I think that it's almost the most important is when it's super calm. when it's super calm, that's when it's almost harder to read. When you have a bunch of wind and the waves are going, it's usually pretty predictable and constant. But when you get those really calm days, it's amazing how much difference one direction or another will make. And the other thing is, like, especially in the central basin. So there's actually a chart that you can look up online, but it's really interesting to see how the lake sieges. And what I mean by that is, so like I said, if you get a bunch of wind from the southwest, it's going to make the water level in Buffalo rise. Okay. Well, that wind stops and that water level comes down, and then it goes. The water pushes back to Toledo, and then it kind of sloshes back and forth, and you could see those different water levels changing. There's a gauge for that. But if you're in the central basin, that whole time the water in the central basin, right in the middle, staying right the same level, but that water is moving through. And what I've noticed is amazing is how that current can change throughout the day, throughout hour to hour, one direction versus another, even just right out in the middle of the lake. So, it makes a big difference with, and the biggest difference, I will tell you, the one thing that makes the biggest difference, it's not that the walleye sees your bait and says, oh, you know what? That spinner is moving through the water at 1.2 miles an hour, and I don't think I only want to bite it at 0.9 miles an hour. No, it's not. That's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is the depth control, which people need to understand. So, when you're fishing like an inline weight, I use the offshore pro guppy weights. When you're fishing that 3-ounce inline weight, if you change that speed by 0.3, or actually it's even more of a factor with the lighter weights when you're going down to like the 1-ounce weights. If you change that speed by 0.3 through speed through the water, that could change the depth of that bait by 5, 6, 7 feet. That could easily put you out of the strike zone. So the biggest thing with knowing your speed in walleye fishing is more keeping your baits in the strike zone than it is, what's going to trigger bites. Now it definitely matters. Sometimes they want a speed to trigger the bites, but it's more about the depth control than anything else.
Very, very interesting. Wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the Predator Championships, and you going over to Europe fishing and representing Team USA. We call it the Predator Championships, but it's hard to find information on the Predator Championships because it's called the 14th Carnivorous Artificial Bait Boat Angling World Championships. That's a mouthful right there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really, really cool thing that's going on. It's a world championship for fishing, and it is the Carnivorous Artificial Boat Angling Championship. So carnivorous meaning it's for predator fish. So what we do is you go to whatever host country given body of water they choose, and you fish for the top predator species on that water, and it could be multiple species. So in this case, we were in Latvia and we were fishing for pike, zander, and perch. So you can go out and target any one of those. It's artificial baits only. It's casting only. There's no trolling. You can't even fish vertical, and it's out of a boat. So it's a really cool format. Mostly European countries, but there's other countries like us. Canada gets in it every once in a while. South Africa was down there a few years ago before I started in it, and it's growing, and it's globally recognized. And the really cool thing is it's in the works, that along with bass fishing, to become an Olympic sport. So it's, to think that, hey, fishing like we do could be in the Olympics someday is pretty incredible. And then, the opportunity to go and wear the red, white, and blue, and the flag on your shoulder, and, USA Angling, it's really, it's pretty surreal, and definitely a tremendous opportunity, something I'm very proud of, and something I certainly don't take for granted.
I watched an interview that you did with Chuck Earls talking about this, and I think it was after you had come back from your first experience going over there, and it sounded really, really interesting in that, when we think about tournament walleye anglers, tournament anglers of any kind, for me anyway, it's the boat and how everyone has their boat set up, and you've got all these incredible electronics, and you got the big motors, and you're going over there and you're basically using a loaner boat. And these are not the boats that we're used to seeing, at least on the walleye, on the tournament trails here. Tell me about that situation and going over and kind of jumping on a boat that's really kind of set up maybe the way our grandpas would have their boats set up, and you guys got to make those work for these tournament setups.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's variety in it too, because and it's dependent on the country. So like, a few years back they were in England, and England are just really small bodies of water. And I mean, everybody there is fishing out of a 14-foot boat or 15, 16-foot boat with a tiller. And so that's what you got. You're an island nation. So that's what people had. Now, last year in Czech Republic, you got to see a little bit more variety of the European boats. So there was some more, I would call it a little bit more worthy boats there. There were a lot of them were the competitors' own boats that they were able to bring there, because a lot of the European nations, they can just trailer their boats. But there's some nice boats, but a big boat for them is a 19, 20 footer with a 200 on it. Because they don't have, you kind of don't realize it until you go over. They don't have the freshwater bodies of water like we do here in the United States. So they don't have a need for, a 23-foot Ranger with a 400 horsepower motor on it and a kicker, So, but the one thing that I've been impressed with in both places, they are way into their electronics. So, like over there, everybody's got multiple forward-facing sonar units on their boats. The active target. There's several with the Garmin. This boat and this year actually in Latvia we had a really nice boat. It was actually the tournament director's boat who was nice enough to let us use his boat, and it had a Lowrance unit on it. It had a live scope on it. It had active target. I mean, it was decked out, and it was pretty nice. It's still there is the uncomfortable level of, it's kind of like trying to go play, I don't golf, but I imagine if you try to go play golf with someone else's clubs, or, put on someone else's pair of sneakers and tried to play basketball. But it's not the biggest deal. It's something that we can adapt to. And it is an interesting variable, but, I'll take this a little bit further. The bigger issues and the bigger things that we've learned over the last couple of years that'll help us in the future. And to be quite honest, we haven't been that competitive in the last 2 years. We've finished kind of, as a team, we've done our pairs have done good, but as a team, it's kind of that's a cool thing. It's a collective team score for the United States and 2 different boats out there. We haven't done that well, but we've learned some really important lessons. And, part of it is the format of the tournament, and that you don't have to catch every fish. You have every species. You just have to catch as many as you can, and every fish is scoreable, which is a different mentality than we're used to. We're used to fishing for the best 5 fish we can go for. So fishing for trophies is a much bigger deal in our tournaments, whereas there it's firing through as many as you possibly can. So we kind of learned a little bit of the thought process on trying to figure out what species you can score the best with. And then the other hard thing that we've learned is that these species, even though they're perch, they're not our perch. They don't react and bite the same way that ours do. And the pike, they're kind of similar, but the biggest one that's totally different is the zander. I mean, a zander looks like a walleye, but is nothing like a walleye. What triggers them, how they get them to bite, things like that. And we're learning that, and we've taken a lot of that, and we're gonna make some noise in this thing in the near future for sure, if we keep getting this opportunity one way or another. So it's really cool, and I hope it grows like crazy.
Yeah, I was listening to that Chuck Earls conversation that you had, and getting those zander to bite. And again, you can't vertical jig them, you can't troll them. So everything's got to be on the cast, everything's got to be on the reel. So like you guys trying to break that down and solve the puzzle on how to get those zander to bite was a little bit of a challenge figuring all that out.
Yeah, and the other tough part about it too is us anglers. So myself, John Hoyer, Max Wilson, Nick Schertz, we're the ones who have done it the last year and the last couple of years, and all just incredible anglers. But the hard part is they have a limited practice, a limited official practice. So you have 2 days of practice, and then it's a 3-day tournament. Before that, last year, before the tournament, there was a week where you were closed off the water. So if we wanted to go for practice, we had to go a week prior, stay there and find something to do for a week, and then come back to fish a tournament, or make 2 separate trips. And then this year it was 2 days of officially the body of water is closed. Well, we all have busy schedules. I had the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship. Some of the other guys had hunting commitments. John does his TV show. I mean, we were busy, so there wasn't an opportunity to go before the official practice. So getting only those 2 days of practice is a real challenge, considering one thing we've learned too is like a lot of these other countries, like they're there for 3 weeks before the body of water is closed. Like I know Ukraine and Estonia and Latvia, and I mean it is a huge deal for them, and they're funded by their governments, and so they get a lot more time, which that's definitely not an excuse for us, but it's definitely an advantage that they have. And in the future we're going to try to find, I don't think it's going to be a 3-week thing, but even if we just had a few more days, it would help out tremendously. So that's one thing. But then back to how to figure out triggering the zander. It's like, well, it's electronics. First of all, we're going around and we're using the active target and finding these fish on the live forward facing sonar for sure. But then it's just amazing how much different it was to get them to trigger. And the thing with zander we figured out is they're so lazy. Like they do not, like you can, like with a walleye, you pop a jig and wrap or a snap jig, a fluke or something past them, and that triggers them a lot. What you want to do with the zander mostly is you got to drop that bait just on them, and when you put that on them, you just have to move it so slowly by them. And if you speed up or twitch it or snap it or anything, they just forget it. Like they just want the easiest meal possible. So it's almost like if you were allowed to fish bait, you could put a piece of cut bait in front of them and they'd probably bite it, but they don't want to chase anything, or they don't want to, they're not that aggressive. But man, I'll tell you what though, when they decide they want it, they absolutely thump it and they fight great, and they are a lot of fun. It's just a whole different trigger that we learned.
And this series is going to come to the United States. This is what I heard on that Chuck Earls podcast. When is this going to come to the United States?
Well, I don't really know. I've heard that they are coming to the United States. It was supposed to be last year, and then it got pushed back. I think part of it was the host. We were going to do it in Green Bay, and then there was issues with you being able to host it there. I think part of that was to, the size of the body of water. Whereas, if we had, it's be challenging to have this on a place where you could have a blow day. So I think that was part of the situation. And then, there's brass at U.S. Angling that could probably answer that question better than I could. But it would be, I'm hoping within the next 2 to 3 years. I know next year the plan is in Ireland. I heard Estonia is in the cards in the near future as well. So wherever it is, sign me up. I'm going. I don't care. I'll go to the moon if it's in the moon. But, it would be really cool to see it come here. And with that being said, I was telling my wife, it'd be cool to come here and do really well here, but it would almost be extra special to go over to one of those countries and win there too. And the interesting thing too that I found out this year is in the last 4 years, the host country has never medaled, which is remarkable to me. So, the top three, you would think that the host country would be a lock for top three, and in the last 3 or 4 years, never has the host country medaled. Now, I would like to think that if it came to the United States, that'd be a different story because these guys would be coming to fish a species they'd never fished before, but we'll see. Like I said, my focus now is Ireland next year and learning as much as I can about that. I've started to research on that, and this year definitely I'm going to hope to make some trips over before it actually the actual official practice, so I can get some time on the water and whatnot.
You got to reach out to your congressman and get some funding so you can get over there a little earlier.
Yeah, I know it's tough. I mean, money's not that's not something I'm the best at, is getting people to just give me money. So, or give us money. But I mean, what I need to do is get Delta Airlines on it, and they can start flying us over there. I actually kind of approached my chief pilot. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this. Is there any way we could work the schedule out so I can just operate the flight over there to Amsterdam, and then, that's where we connect all our Delta flights over there, and then underway. But it was just logistically, it's just too much of a mess. I think that'd be pretty cool to get to fly yourself over there to go and fish that. What I really need,
the official airlines of the U.S. angling team.
Yeah, heck yeah. What I really need to do is just drive the Ranger 622 right up in the cargo compartment and take that over. Now then we'd be really talking.
There you go.
That's going to be a much harder sell, though. Hey, let me throw an extra 6,000 pounds on this airplane here.
Speaking of big checks, though, you had a pretty cool Halloween costume we all saw on Instagram and Target Walleye. You went as Happy Gilmore. Tell us a little bit about that Halloween costume.
Did that make Target Walleye? I didn't know that.
It did, yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. It was. I mean, of course, I've always loved the movie Happy Gilmore, and like Happy, I am not a golfer whatsoever. So, well, I don't think I'm a golfer, at least, but just like he didn't. But I mean, I always I don't know, like something about like when I got into fishing, and the first time you see a fishing tournament, you see a guy holding up a big check. There's just something cool about that, So in the Loot over the last 2 years, like that's when I really started getting back into the Loot. Before I was in the, mostly in the National Walleye Tour and the MWC and stuff. And in the Loot in the last 2 years, Jason Fisher took it over, and it's a really cool thing he does. So like I think it's the top 3 get a big check, So I mean, to me, that's cooler than a trophy. But we've been collecting quite a few over the last 2 years. I think I got 6 of them. So it just thought it was a funny, good prop to use for a Halloween costume. So I got a lot of good feedback on it. It was fun. Big checks are cool for sure.
Yeah, it was really good. Ryan, I've kept you longer than I usually do. It was just a great conversation. You had a lot of good stuff to talk. So I kept you on a little longer, but was there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about?
Oh, no, I mean, that was pretty good. I love talking fishing. So, anything like this, no, I think we're pretty good. Thanks for having me on, and, thanks for supporting our passion, Great Lakes fishing, and getting the word out there for, everybody else that's interested in it, and if anyone listening to this says, any questions specifically for me, I'm usually more than happy to reply, hit me on Instagram or Facebook or something like that. And I'll be happy to get back to you and help you out.
Very good. He's Ryan Buddie. Thanks so much for taking some time with us. It was fun talking to you. First time on our show, and I just appreciate taking the time out for it.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris.